everyone, welcome to After Dark Analysis. Today I'm going to be joined by filmmaker Rycke Foreman. He is making a film called Grizzly that is currently fundraising, and we are going to talk about the art and the process of making an independent horror film and the fine line you have to walk with a horror comedy. Right, so you kind of wanted to talk about like horror comedy and kind of where Grizzly is in that vein.
I think that could definitely be something. Good fortune. The last couple of days, I've had a couple of people come to me saying, "Hey, I've got a producer who's looking for something." So, trying to set up, talking to them in case this doesn't work and seeing if we can't go ahead and flip it over that way anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I just got some folks that are actually out of South Africa. They did 4 or 5 films in I don't know what language, and then they've done their last 2 in English though, and got a guy. What was his name? Gerald Root, something like that. Oscar nominated. So
Hey, that's never a bad thing.
Should indicate he knows how to use a camera and direct some actors in, but I'm just trying to decide if I'd actually want to send Grizzly to them. I kind of think I need to direct that one. Not that I'm particularly a great director. I don't think I'm a great director, but I'm a much better writer.
And I mean, everybody starts somewhere.
Definitely. Well, I've shot a number of short films, or directed 4 short films, and I've done local area ads and that kind of stuff. But man, that's I don't know. It's 2 different worlds. It's crazy having actors who have some idea of what they're doing and some idea of what to expect a set to be like, and then locals who you try to impress all this stuff upon, and they just can't get it.
Well, I mean, you could always do like a Cannibal the musical thing. The one big scene where they had the big musical number, they got a bunch of locals to come off hot dogs and beans.
Yep. That's kind of how I figured I would handle the picnic scene in Grizzly. Free food if you'll just show up and be in the background.
Yep, everybody I know that's worked on movies is like, you can pay your actors like shit, you can't pay them at all, just feed them, and you'll be fine.
Yep. Yeah. That is the real prerequisite.
Exactly.
As long as there's food involved, you can usually get a couple people.
Normally willing to show up for free food.
Right? Yeah, it's one of the few times I do get out of the house is to go on set,
That's definitely a good reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Just hard to do as a regular job here in Central AZ,
Yeah, I got a cousin out there. It's not a hotbed of diversity and culture.
It's weird. I've lived in a lot of places in my life, and dude, I mean, you go outside and you try to smile at your neighbor, they frown and get suspicious, and it's a weird town. It is a weird town.
Oh yeah, we get that here. It depends on if we're in the nice developments and the rich areas versus where we're at now.
Yeah, if Grizzly didn't work, one of the next things on my plate, just, also to help sell books and that kind of stuff. I do think I'm going to start a YouTube channel. Like I say, I've done a little bit of early stuff, and man, yeah, I'm trying to work down to the equipment. I was used to a little nicer equipment, and so far it hasn't been coming out very, very nice looking, but it'll be nice once I can actually plug in a mic again.
Yeah, I'm working off a donated mic and completely off freeware, so I can understand that feeling.
Now, I've got a really nice Rode mic, but nothing to plug it into at the moment. I know, it's killing me, man, because that thing, my sound would at least be taken care of. One thing at a time.
Yeah, you're not sounding bad on my end.
Good.
Alright, so I think it's fair to say, because there tends to be two types of horror comedies, the unintentional Ed Wood, and then the kind of more intentional, and it sounds like this is where Grizzled hits.
Yes, although it does try to, it does rely on some unintentional comedy as well, although we try to do that in an intentional way. One of the things I want to do, we're going to use we're going to use puppets instead of CG for the penguin. And one of the things, every time you see the penguin, I want to see the mic shadow on it, or I want to see the mic just dip into frame a little bit, as if we think we're getting sound off the penguin. So other than that, I want the sound to, be very professional. I never do want the mic to dip in until you see the penguin. And then it's kind of hard to describe. In some ways, yes, it is meant to come off as unintentional comedy, and yet it is very intentional.
No, I understand what you're saying. There's a film called Invasion of the Reptoids by Ted Moring that is a nod to the really bad 50s sci-fi films. So while his actors and actresses are wearing like Tyvek suits and really clear plastic alien masks, there's points where you can tell the actors are better than they're giving you.
Right.
But it's that homage to it of like, yes, I get this is ridiculous. I'm okay with that.
Yep, yeah, exactly. Did you ever see Lost Skeleton of Cadavra?
No, I can't say I've heard of that, but that's a hell of a title.
Right. Yeah, done in a very, very similar fashion to the one you were just talking about. Yeah, you could actually tell that the actors were intentionally delivering their lines a little clunky, and although that's one of the things I don't want to do in Grizzled, with maybe a few exceptions here and there. I do what I'm actually looking for is, I guess in part, we the filmmakers, me the director, the actors, everybody, we approach this as if we think we have Oscar-winning material when we really have, Grizzly or Piranha or something along that lines that is entertaining, but it's not actually good. Most of the actors will really be kind of delivering their lines very earnestly, very heartfelt, and with no real thought of, God, this is a stupid situation. They're just earnest and in the moment and responding the way that they would need to with a giant mutant penguin on set with you.
So it's almost that Evil Dead type of comedy where you actually have good actors in like Bruce Campbell, but the situation going on is so incredibly ridiculous that it's like, okay, how is this still happening?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things in casting it. I really didn't ever go with anybody known as a comedian. I went with very straight-laced actors, and a lot of actors that are fairly well known for low-budget horror.
That makes sense, and it seems like low-budget horror actors seem to be plentiful as well.
Definitely. I'm so happy that there's, this dedicated group that, I don't know, they never let us down. Sometimes their movies do, but they don't.
And that's the thing. It's how many other genres are you gonna get a casting call of you're gonna be running through woods and don't fall down, or do fall down but make it look like an accident. You're gonna be covered in blood today. There's something to be said. It's a special breed of actor.
It definitely is. The Sedona Film Festival here in Arizona, I worked with them for years and years, and man, talked to dozens of actors, dozens of them, and we'd pitch almost every one of them. Hey, got some horror scripts. I'd love to. Oh, no, I don't do horror.
Yeah, horror became that dirty word like porn, basically. And it's one of those, it's like, I get it and I don't get it, because I actually have a series going right now where me and another guy are talking about all of these major directors and actors who started in horror. The reason I've stated 1,000,001 times on this channel is horror's always oversaturated. So the odds of striking gold are actually pretty decent.
Yeah, it's, horror films are usually really cheap to pull off. They're often independent endeavors. They really are a good place to kind of break in, even if horror isn't what you want to do. And I think one of the other things with horror also, other than horror being a genre to itself, it doesn't really fall into any other genre. You have horror science fiction, you have dramatic horror, you have comedy horror, you just have straight kind of slasher horror. And yet, all those different areas, you're really having to learn, how to bring characters through situations. Horror is just very symbolic, probably more so than any other genre, or at least non-fantastic genre. And so you really kind of have to learn with everything. If you're going to have a good horror movie, you really do have to focus on the character. And if you're going to focus on the characters, you really do need to have good actors. And you really have to learn the art of direction and not getting, too bogged down in either the action or the exposition. I think I wandered all over the place with that. That was a wonderful answer, wasn't it?
Oh, no. It's nice to learn about process and thoughts and interests that go into this, because, as I've been very upfront about with this channel, I made it because I was sick and tired of everybody dismissing horror. And it really has a lot of social commentary and a lot of things to say, even when we're talking about something that sounds as ridiculous as a massive penguin.
Right.
Because you mentioned cost, do you feel that the penguin, having it as a puppet, is obviously a stylistic choice and kind of a throwback, but is it more cost effective than CG, do you think?
No, CG would be much more cost effective. I could probably shave a considerable amount off the budget, actually. Yeah, I mean, from the cost of materials to, something that size, we'll probably have to have 2 to 3 operators unless we get really clever in the way it's constructed. Yeah, as everybody knows with Jaws, not that we'll be going too mechanical with it, I don't think. I don't know, that'll be up to my effects guys. But as everybody knows with Jaws, man, how many days did they have problems with that shark? And I mean, part of why Jaws ran so over budget initially was because they had to scrub days because the stupid shark wouldn't work, Or, as we are, as anybody in horror probably knows, that it's also part of what kept Spielberg getting so creative with, like, the point of view shots and the barrels and things like that was, even on big budget productions, at some point you will run out of money and you do have to start finding some other way to get the job done.
The mechanical shark issues were also a big part of why you didn't see much of it.
Yeah, exactly. On the other hand, man, a full 10% of the budget I'm throwing into the effects. I do want to be able to see the penguin.
Totally understandable, and I don't think the penguin is going to have the quite as big an effect as Jaws in the revealing.
Yeah, exactly. I think the crowd would actually be more disappointed because of the comedy and the tone if we didn't show it a little bit more than what you do see the shark in Jaws.
Yeah, completely understandable. And am I correct in assuming there's kind of an environmental underpinning to this?
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit, although I really did try to keep it more toward the background and leave that as something you can call out if you want to as a viewer. But yeah, I mean, everything from, everything from animal experimentation, that's actually what happens to the penguin to cause it to grow once it escapes. There's everything to that. There is some subplot, although it's more so in the novel than in the movie. There is a lot more subplot about other animals going crazy as well, but that's actually due to environmental issues. And I don't know, that's addressed very briefly in the film, but yeah, the novel makes a little more of a deal of the environmental factor. But I don't know. Unfortunately, I think that's one of the only places you can really possibly talk effectively about it, and I feel kind of silly saying that in the context of Grizzled.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the more recent example I can think of environmental horror is The Happening, so...
Speaking of comedy horror...
Yeah, that one was completely unintentional.
Oh, boy. Yeah, wasn't it? But, yeah, it's great for that.
When John Leguizamo carries your movie, while he's not a bad actor at all, it shouldn't have been that way.
Yep. Yeah, The Happening was... Ugh, what happened? I think maybe that's what it should have been called.
Yeah. It's like, everything's okay now? I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess that does maybe... does kind of illustrate some of, the absolute... I do think Mark Wahlberg was really showing earnestness in that film. And yet, boy, wasn't it completely out of place.
Zooey Deschanel was weirdly wooden. It feels almost like she was instructed to be that wooden, which I guess could make sense because of shock, but I don't know, it didn't read that way.
Right? Yeah, it was kind of odd. I thought she was a little better actor than that, but I don't know. I guess, look at the Star Wars movies. How do those poor actors get through some of that dialogue? Especially the stuff George wrote. Wow.
Yeah, there's definitely some preachiness in some of that, and definitely some stumbling to figure it out, which happens with any young filmmaker. Coppola did it with Dementia 13, so...
Right.
If Coppola can do it, anybody can.
See, there you go. And I don't know. I mean, there is some certain charm to that if it's done right. I mean, it can be horrible and just completely suck you out of the movie. And yet, boy, if that clunk fits in with some of the other elements, it can somehow increase the whole of the parts. And that's... I don't know. I don't get that part. I think I do get some of why bad movies work, but yeah, I don't know. That one I'm not sure about. What is it about that clunky dialogue? Is it just that callback to the kind of the 50s style of acting that I don't know. A lot of people still seem to think that's acting.
That very staccato Shatner style.
Yeah, that's, I suppose, folks who have never been in the biz, you think of acting, to be or not to be, capturing that sound that you're acting, instead of that more naturalistic feel that I guess Brando really kind of brought to the table and shifted into the modern era with, I don't know, did that even make sense?
I get what you're going for.
This is the challenge of ADD, you start at point A and hit 3 points, and then you're at Q.
That's often where these things go with me, so that's 100% fine.
I think that's maybe an advantage that creative people have sometimes. I seem to make the same mental list that most other people do, and, okay, get this, But I don't ever keep it in list form. It's just, like, scattered on the floor of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, point R is very likely to be next to point Z. And then it's like, oh, wow, hey, look how those two things go together. Well, if you keep it in the normal list like most people have, they, they'll never put those points together and realize, hey, wait a minute, look at that crazy weird juxtaposition you can put against that, or the way that it goes together, like, chocolate and peanut butter or whatever.
Not necessarily a hindrance, because that does lead to a lot more creative problem solving, which, let's be fair, any major piece, especially like something like this, you're going to need creative problem solving. Something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the world of independent film, I think the only thing you can really expect is for most things to go wrong. And then yeah, it's going to be okay. How do we get past this and make it happen anyway,
Yeah, sometimes you just got to go, fuck it, we're doing it live, and just go for it and see if it works.
Yep. That's the Grizzled teaser we did. That was kind of what ended up happening with it. I was surprised at what a large crew I was able to gather for it initially. And but we were trying to shoot in the middle of winter, and I don't know, Arizona weather's been changing. I think, climate change. And man, we had a massive winter snowstorm the first day we were going to shoot, and had a massive rainstorm the next time around, and it actually flooded out one of my locations.
Oh.
I know, and I mean, this was a zero budget production. All I had was food for the people.
Yeah, that's serious micro budget right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that's, so in having to put it off twice, man, we had a really nice sound system. One of our people had an H1, what's it called, an H1N or something like that. Really nice little sound system that would have gotten us professional sound, and had a couple other cameras lined up, and because of the delays, nobody was available, and so I just had friends and family, basically. They're like, hey, look, let's just try this, and I'm like, oh, I don't think it's gonna work, but fuck it, let's do it. and yeah, it didn't work at all. My two actresses, I actually, there's a whole other scene that was filmed prior to the teaser you saw. And man, I mean, that footage is almost unusable. There were so many problems.
Was it problems with the actors themselves, or problems with setting, equipment, weather, or just kind of everything?
It was everything. One of the problems, although I at least had people step in, but 11 hours before production, I was getting ready to try and go to bed and get a little bit of sleep, and get my butt up early and start taking care of everything for production. Right before I go to bed, one of my actresses gets in touch with me. I am so sick. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it. And it's like, oh my god. It's like, all right, we'll figure something out. Don't worry about it. If you can make it the next day, please, we'll just switch around, shoot the teaser scene for Grizzled. We were supposed to shoot that on the second day. Mm-hmm. Ended up shooting it on the first day because of these problems. Anyway, so I lose the one actress. I get her covered that night and wake up the next morning to an email from the other actress. I am so sick. I can't get in.
What, was there a bug going around or something?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Everybody was sick that week. I'd lost a couple of crew members who were going to remain to sickness. Lost a couple of them to actual paying gigs. And yeah, I don't know. Shooting independent is always a mess. That's why I was trying to actually get some money. It was like, all right, if I can pay people to show up, maybe I won't deal with these problems anymore, but no.
Being a feature length might help as well, because I just heard time and time again, shorts are a bad investment, so.
Right.
I don't know, like, is there a way for me to hammer that home? It's like, is this a better investment than the other stuff?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out too, and I don't know. I get amazingly good response with Grizzled. It's probably actually my best reviewed script, which cracks me up because it is so intentionally rough around the edges. You know.
If you're showing it to horror fans, like, we all kind of get that, though. Like, it's definitely a cultural thing.
So, anyway, yeah, but, well, that's the thing, though, is, I mean, even outside of horror, it's still, I don't know, people just love the idea of the penguin. You know, something about that. And I mean, oh gosh, I don't know. You can look on a couple of the channels who have posted stuff, Mindless Entertainment and Cinematic Venom. And man, one of the Mindless Entertainment pages, yeah, it had 50 some odd comments, and I think 40 of them were, "Oh my God, this sounds awesome."
In my head, I'm just like, could we get merchandise with the penguin eventually?
Right? I'd love to. But yeah, I mean, it's unquestionably the most well-received script I have, and I mean, not even in horror. You know, most of the other stuff, the horror people like it, and you know, people that don't want to read horror won't look at it. But yeah, the Penguin, for some reason, that gets most of them to, you know, even non-horror lovers to, yeah, okay, I want to check this out. And yeah, so I don't know. I definitely thought this would be the right one to kickstart. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little underwhelming at the moment, but yeah, we'll count on the last minute donations, right?
Let's hope so, yeah. Crossing fingers for that. Yeah, you
Yes.
mentioned you had other projects going. Would you mind putting those out there for listeners, see if they've heard of something before?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind at all. The next project, I don't know, the next closest one, I guess, would be Hacked Off, which it's a spoof in its own right, although not like Grizzled. I mean, Grizzled is just, I don't know, in your face silliness is Grizzled. Hacked Off is, I guess, a little more situational comedy. Maybe you could say it deals with a group of supernatural psychotic hillbillies, kind of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre family, or kind of Jason Voorhees and his mom if they had grown up together. The youngest son in that clan doesn't want to kill all these pretty girls he sees in the woods, though. He wants to get to know them better. And yeah. And so at one point, he decides to rescue a victim instead of kill her. And then the two of them basically have to combine their wits to be able to beat the rest of the family and get out of the forest alive.
So kind of quasi Tucker and Dale versus Evil had the immediate redneck stereotype been right?
Yes. Yeah. The Tucker and Dale actually influenced hacked off just slightly. I'd had the idea for a couple of years, but whatever I tried it, whatever I was trying just wasn't working. And I finally saw Tucker and Dale, and it was like, oh, have him be romantically interested in the victim. That's it. And once I got that angle down, it was, I don't know, it was probably one of the fastest scripts I wrote, about 3 weeks for it.
That is impressively fast.
I couldn't believe how fast it was, but man, I had so much of the world built up anyway, and I just couldn't find the right story to work through that world. And yeah, boy, once I saw the story, I mean, everything was just in place, and man, yeah, it was. I worked about 16 hours a day on it. I mean, it was just almost nonstop, just start to finish. There was one point about 3/4 of the way through where I took a day. There was a twist that I didn't even see coming. And I had to decide, should I make this twist or not? And I went ahead and did. So, but yeah, I don't know. That was definitely one of the fastest I ever wrote. Of course, I've polished it up a lot over the years, but and actually just finished writing a novel for it too. I'm going to release Grizzled and Hacked Off as a double novel, kind of like those Ace double novels of the 70s, but with a little bit of, Grindhouse thrown in also, Tarantino and Rodriguez's Grindhouse. I'm spoofing in a book. I don't know. But I think it kind of works out. I've had a couple of beta readers take a look at it, and I'm getting pretty good response so far. So I'm happy about that. But anyway, so that was Hacked Off. I guess this is also a sister script to Hacked Off, except in more thematically, is another slasher called Slash, in which two brothers are, I don't know. One brother is pretty normal and just kind of wants the normal life. The other one's a psychopath in The Becoming. And so yeah, it like Hacked Off is standing up against crazy family, not doing the harmful things that they want you to do. That's a terrible log line for it.
Everybody goes through that rebellious phase. So what does that rebellious phase look like when your family's insane and out there?
Yeah, that was the basic thrust. The writing of it came about. I knew a serial killer, guy named Bobby Fry, or Robert Fry, actually. Yeah, he's on death row in New Mexico right now, and his MO was to drag other people into murdering with him. There's two other people in prison right now that he was basically like, you help me kill these people or I'm going to kill you. And so I got thinking about that. It was like, man, what if I had been with him in one of those situations? Would I have gone along with it and helped to murder somebody, or would I have stood up and frankly, he would have killed me? Oh man, he was a big guy. He would have dismantled me. Yeah, And so in thinking about that, and also, I don't know, I played Christopher Wren in the Mousetrap right around the era when all that was happening. And all that kind of came together in my head. And yeah, it was like, boy, what if he would have dragged me into that? So yeah, no, I haven't worked on Slash for a little while, so I was actually kind of getting myself caught back up in it. But anyway, yeah, it's two brothers, and one of them's going off the deep end, and the other one is basically dealing with, how much should I turn my back on my family? Should I tell the police? He's not sure about his brother, but he's pretty sure. And, of course, by the end, basically his inaction causes a lot of his friends to die. And so that, in turn, finally acts as his catalyst. Is he going to stand up to his brother, or is he going to fold over and let things go on how they are? So, yeah, God. I should have had my elevator pitches ready for this.
Well, thank you for knowing what an elevator pitch is.
Right.
Yeah, no, people like to believe in their own heads when something bad happens on the news or something like that, yeah, I would have stood up and I would have done the right thing and I would have X, Y, and Z. But until you're really faced with that, you have no idea.
Life where it's like, I should have stood up in that situation, and I didn't. And if you look around, most people deal with that. I don't know. I think that's just one of the big mysteries of life. Oh my God, what do I do? You never know exactly. You never know for sure what you're seeing sometimes, Sometimes you can see all the signs in somebody, like with Bobby Fry. I was not surprised at all when he was arrested for murder. Yeah. And all the signs were there. Everybody knew it, and yet nobody could do anything about it. And yet, nobody knew what to do about it. And that's, I don't know, that's life, and that's a lot of what I was exploring in that script,
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense, and that's a good concept to go after. That's an interesting concept.
I do think if horror is going to be any good, you have to tell a human story and just put horror as your backdrop. It causes the changes in the person. It forces their hand to actually take action or not take action. And because that is the nature of humans. We don't take action until we're so uncomfortable we have to.
It's a moral question, but it's also, as you said, like, no one knew what to do. It's like, you can't... I'll go back to Tucker and Dale in this when they address calling the police and says, like, what are we going to say? Howdy do, officer. All these kids keep dying. No one's going to believe us.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's... I don't know. I think that is just part of what makes a good art. Novel, book, paintings. There's some story, there's some question, there's some quandary that really reflects real life.
It's relatable, and it's, well, almost every work, novel, movie, any kind of storytelling really relies on that hero's journey.
Yeah.
The big difference is what spurns that hero's journey, and is it worthwhile, or is it kind of flimsy and just there?
Yeah, exactly. And horror does have a deservedly bad rap sometimes for that very reason. A lot of times it's just, we just need to slap some blood on the screen. That's it. I don't know. Peter Jackson pulled that off in Dead Alive.
Yeah. That was one of those movies, like you were talking about with Grizzled. It's so insane, you cannot force yourself to look away.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I do think a lot of that was really good writing on Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, right? I think it was the two of them that wrote it.
I think you're right.
They found ways to continue raising the stakes, but inside that universe without ever violating the rules they had set up,
And we see that a lot in horror when franchises keep going, is we had this universal rule, but now we don't. Remember Elm Street did that a lot with the Elm Street children.
Yeah.
It's just the reason got more and more far-flung as to how we didn't know about these Elm Street children before. And then it got to a point where they're just like, they weren't even from Elm Street anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that is one of the one of the problems with sequels. Sometimes you get the filmmakers who do pick up on the threads that were left dangling in the originals. And if you pick those up and go ahead and weave those through the second narrative, I mean, you can turn them on their head, you can do whatever you need to, but you still bring them into that second narrative, and then, wow, suddenly you get films like, I don't know, like Terminator 2 or Aliens. Boy, James Cameron's really good at that.
Yeah, I have a lot of issues with James Cameron, but sequels he can do rather well.
That's what I'm sitting there. I didn't think Avatar was any kind of amazing. I mean, it was good, but I don't understand what all the hubbub was. On the other hand, I'm almost excited about Avatar 2. I mean, that man does understand how to make incredible sequels.
I was good with Avatar until he started berating the people who made Piranha about essentially not using 3D correctly. It's like, 3D has been around for a while, man. It was around before you used it. It'll be around after you use it. And they're throwing back to the original novelty of it.
Right, yep.
It's one of those, you can use the same kind of medium to tell several different stories, several different ways, and that's part of the experience because that diversity links into people.
Yes, exactly. And gives the filmmaker part of their own voice, too.
That's the balancing act some people don't seem to realize is, well, yes, you have to build this universe that's unique enough to keep interest. You have to keep things grounded enough. It's hard to do.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's something I heard a long time ago that I think is a truism for fiction and art, I guess. You can only tell one lie. There can be other lies that stem off of that single lie, but you can only tell one lie. Jason Voorhees can't die. you know, but then the rest of it, you pretty much have to set in the real world. And you have to find the way that one weird little thing will alter the physics, so to speak, of the world. And then, work down that line. And that's, I don't know, I wasn't at all a fan of, I'm not a fan of really any of the Disney Star Wars myself. And I think that was one of the big problems with Last Jedi, is it just diverged so much from what had been carefully set up in so many other films that it really threw a lot of people off. It really jarred a lot of people.
Being on the other side of nerd rage is just never fun. It looks terrifying.
Right? Yeah, I know. It's glad those people only use their words and not chainsaws.
And my assumption is your one lie is that massive penguins exist.
Yeah. That is the one lie in Grizzled. That a massive penguin exists and that nobody takes it for being as ridiculous as what it really is.
Well, I mean, if you really were to put that in a real world context, it would be one of those, it's shocking, and you're gonna have to react to it because it's right freaking there. You can't pretend like it's not.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is how the characters do end up approaching it. Is just, okay, this is stupid as hell, but it's here. It's now. We have to deal with it. Then you end up starting to set up horror tropes, and and then you subvert that expectation at the very end with something that'll be funny, you know, with something that's just unexpected. I'd mentioned the post-traumatic stress or whatever it is a little bit earlier, and yeah, man, I've been really anxious this whole weekend, and I'm not sure why. Nothing has triggered it, but
well, I mean, you're nearing at the end on a fundraiser for a project you really want. Being anxious, totally understandable.
Yeah, that's probably some of it. I don't know. I figured the anxiety over that would really kick in next week. It's been an interesting journey, and I do hope we get to make it.
I've seen films where it's a ridiculous situation going on, and people start reacting to it like you normally would, but accept it far too quickly.
Right.
Which is like, you saw this thing 5 seconds ago, and now you're just like, okay, it's here.
Yep. Yeah, I do give the characters one moment of, was that a giant mutant penguin? No, it's what I saw. Okay. All right. And then let's go on. But yeah.
You can rule out group hallucination or group, drugging.
Right. Should have brought chemtrails. Yeah. Should have brought that in too. God, I was watching something, I don't know, about a month ago or so on YouTube, just before I really kicked off the crowdfunding thing. And yeah, somebody's out there, they're spraying the air with vinegar, and then, sitting there filming the whole time, and then like 5 minutes later, like, see, look, it's starting to break up. See, you can squirt the vinegar and it'll start breaking up the contrails, the chemtrails, and it's like, what? Do you have any clue how much that dilutes? I mean, those vinegar molecules, A, aren't getting the 3 or 4 miles to that cloud. B, by the time that little spray you hit, that little spritz hit the air, dude, you've got what, 1 part in a billion? and that's in your front yard?
Now your front yard just smells like vinegar. That's all that happened.
Right? But no, they have video proof. They'll show you. Yeah. So I think that's, I don't know. I guess that is some of what I did infuse into the characters with Grizzled, was this crazy sense of propriety, or I don't know, in the real world, people believe all kinds of crazy stuff all the time. And I mean, I've been there. In some of the material I'd sent you, I'd mentioned I grew up in a cult,
Mm-hmm.
And man, I mean, I believed that for the vast majority of my life, that all that was true, And I mean, I ran away when I was 16 and actually left the cult for a long time, but only physically. I still believed it. So kind of everything I did, I was still operating under these false beliefs. And once I finally, I ended up going back to the cult in my early 30s, hoping to make a little more sense of things, I guess. When you get brainwashed, you get brainwashed to work in this tiny little group, pretty much, and not anywhere else. And I've had an extremely hard time functioning in the real world. And that's so anyway. So I eventually went back, and I don't know. I just, for a short while, could force myself to be dogmatic. But after a while, I had to start asking questions. And once I started asking questions, I finally realized the lies I'd been being told. And I actually went in and started learning how to deprogram myself. I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay other people to do that. And yeah, I mean, in doing that, I realized how much every person, I mean, myself included, lies to themselves all the time. Well, and so I guess a lot of us do get brainwashed. One of the things I did realize is, I mean, even if you're a normal person, so to speak, in society, you're still brainwashed into societal expectations and societal norms. And so that's to some degree what we're talking about here. I guess the oddball perceptions of all the people around it. This, damn it, yeah. Yeah, I should have written out some responses.
There was really no way of you knowing, like, hey, let's talk about the time you were in a cult. Like, that, you don't plan for that.
Right. But, yeah, okay, I guess the whole point to that was we all see silly things as being very real. And so that, I guess that's part of the approach to Grizzled. It's such a silly thing, and yet to everybody in Grizzled, it's such a real thing that they can't look past it at the silly machinery behind it, really.
That makes perfect sense. I get where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, so that, that was kind of a lot of the approach in it was just the ridiculousness of human behavior and the way that so often we can't see how absurd what we follow is or what we do or what we react to,
Yeah, because you're so up close to it and you know everything that led you to this particular experience, and it's hard to separate from that.
It really is. Even if you sort of get yourself introduced to the idea of, oh, wow, I've really been brainwashed. I've got all these crazy filters put up, Sometimes the filters are so in place you don't even know they're there to be able to take them down,
Actually working on a series with somebody right now about cult representation in horror films, and what a lot of people don't seem to understand is a lot of times these things start out as some sect of an established religion, and then, as you said, you do one lie and everything branches from there.
Yeah, I don't know, it's funny how, boy, just one little shift in degree a million miles away, how far apart are you from where you would have traveled?
You're good. One little molecule shift and there wouldn't be life on Earth. One little shift is a big deal.
Yeah, and that's, I guess that's the one thing that sort of baffles me as a human being in watching other people, No, this is how it's done. This is the way. This is, and it's like, you don't realize there's like hundreds of ways. You found your way, But there's no, I don't know. I mean, as far as making movies, I mean, there's no real wrong way to do it.
And in that same term, there's no right way either. It is what it is.
Exactly. And I don't know. I think that's maybe part of what makes modern Hollywood films so disappointing, It is that cookie cutter mentality of, no, this is how you do it. This is how it's made. It's this formula. Which, I don't know. Sometimes that works, but man, so much of the time it doesn't. It just leaves, I guess when you're putting that formula in, you're making a machine and you can't have the soul in it.
And it's just this weird thing with viewers and audiences, regardless of genre. You can really tell when somebody is just not into it at all.
Yeah.
It's one of those, a lot of indies get forgiven just because you can tell the people behind the scenes and on screen were really dedicated and really believed in it and really wanted to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Evil Dead, one of my very favorite examples of that. I mean, on just about every level, that film is abysmal. Yeah, I mean, realistically. And yet, oh, I cannot get enough of that. I'm not sure if I would put Evil Dead in my top 10. I'd put Evil Dead 2 in my top 10. But I'd probably put it in my top 20, you know. And that's, I mean, how can a film that goes that wrong be so right? And it's just, I think some of that is what you were just saying. I mean, it's that passion infused by the filmmakers. You can tell that they are trying so hard. And yeah, it's a technical limitation, it's a skill limitation, and so they end up falling short. And yet something about that passion behind it, when it falls short, it instead elevates itself somehow. I, you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, in the first Evil Dead, I do think Bruce Campbell has gone on to be a pretty decent actor. I think there's definitely better actors, but I think he's a pretty decent actor overall. And yet, the first movie, no, I don't think he was very good. He was learning, and yet something about his charisma and something about that drive to be better, I think, came through that performance, and suddenly it took something that really could have been substandard. Yeah, I mean, it brought it up, just like everything in that film did. So bizarre.
And you kind of mentioned this a little bit of putting Evil Dead 2 above Evil Dead, because with Evil Dead 2, they had made those mistakes. So, well, yes, they were far from knowing what they know now. They had kind of gone over this once before, and you had that little bit of technical knowledge now paired with what they wanted to do.
Yep, exactly. And again, I think, I guess jumping back to James Cameron for a second, I think part of why he does so well with sequels is because he can now look at the first one and he can see the universe. The universe is actually set up for him, so he doesn't have to deal with any of that. He can just start dealing with the story inside the universe. And I think that's part of what made it so good was that Raimi, he did pick up technical skill, and yet he was also able to revisit that world that he knew pretty intimately anyway. And coupled with a little bit better budget and with more technical skill, yeah, look what he was able to do with Evil Dead 2. Ah, top 10 movie in my opinion.
As much as people hate it, we see the exact same thing with The Purge. We get introduced to that universe, and each movie we get a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. And I think each movie got a little bit better too, actually.
I agree. I actually really like that franchise.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see where this new one's going. It looks a little more Hunger Games.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm just like, this is a little awkward. And the proposed television series.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if I think maybe that's part of what helped Grizzled out a little bit too. I mean, it's not by any means based on Jaws or Grizzly or any of the other films, but those films did help to establish the world for it. And so I guess it made that a little easier for me as a filmmaker, or as the writer and filmmaker to navigate through it, yeah, and to be able to. I guess one of the harder parts of production is sharing your vision with other people. Trying to find that way to make that abstract into something a little less abstract that they can understand so that you can make it a concrete thing.
It's again that balancing act between keeping it personal and precious so that people know, yes, I do care about this, but willing to let it go enough so other eyes can kind of be like, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't, and it kind of comes together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I don't know, the better you can see it, the better other people can usually see it. And yeah, the better they can see it, the more they can bring exactly what you want. And yet I do have to say, as a filmmaker, and part of this does stem from a lot of guerrilla filmmaking over the years, not having the luxury of budgets and professional actors and stuff like that. But you really kind of get the, as the director, you keep the main focus where it needs to be, and yet try and let all your creatives be creative. Let them bring some part of themselves to your project, so that it's not my project anymore, it's our project. Just with me kind of, or whoever the director is, just kind of guiding it down the right path, and yet knowing when to trust the creatives around you, and when to trust yourself, when to keep it personal, and when to spread it around a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, and again, that's a hard thing to read, and you don't really know until you're on it. Because as much as people kind of look down on guerrilla filmmaking, look at the people it brought us. Kevin Smith started that way. John Waters still works that way.
Yep.
There was, the movie name's escaping me right now, but Bowfinger was based off kind of a real story of these filmmakers just following this woman around who didn't realize she was going to be in a movie.
Right? Yeah, I did hear about that too. But that's Spike Milligan, or one of the guys that I did try to infuse into Grizzled. William Girdler directed the original Grizzly and the original Day of the Animals. And that guy was out of Kentucky, wanted terribly to make films, couldn't get into the Hollywood system, and just started doing it. And his films are kind of like The Evil Dead. They're really awful on most levels. And yet there's just something about them, something about that passion that bleeds through and just makes them classics, makes them something you want to toss in and, into the DVD player every so often and just re-experience that bizarre magic that they somehow managed to capture. It's like I always figured, if I did make it, I really think I'd rather be Roger Corman than Steven Spielberg.
I've got a lot of respect for Roger Corman and Lloyd Kaufman. You can really see the talent and creativity in people when you don't have everything you need.
Yeah, exactly.
And Chester Turner was who I was thinking of. Made these really low budget movies like Black Devil Doll from Hell, and now he has this massive following because these people found this movie, and it's like, yes, it's terribly made and hilarious, but there's this honestness about it.
Yeah. I think that's maybe a great way to put it. I mean, so many of those films just have an honesty that Hollywood can't always capture. I don't know. I think we live in a really strange world, and I love being able to express that through writing and filmmaking and photography and all the other weird stuff I do.
Yeah, because that's the thing. People that are creative are rarely creative in one particular way. So honing an ability somewhere in one aspect is normally honing an ability somewhere else.
I find that very true. Yeah, yeah. You can generally apply the principles from one thing into another thing, and at least give yourself a pretty hefty head start, if not occasionally being able to just, I don't know, just jump right in and actually be fairly good.
Yeah, and that's rare because most people do a lot of trial and error. And there are sometimes you're looking at something, I'm like, this is perfect, this is fine as a viewer. When the artist is like, there's this thing over here, there's this thing over here.
I, I I think that's one of the worst parts. Yeah, I've joined a writing group recently, and uh, two of the stories I've shared recently are two of my earliest stories. I mean, written back in one was actually written in the late '80s, the other was written in the early '90s, and I was really nervous, because I mean these folks are professional writers. And I was really nervous to hand those off to them, and because I mean, in my opinion, both of those stories are really kind of heavy-handed, overwritten, and God, yeah, I passed them off, and man, I couldn't believe how nice they were and how they had like no critiques at all, and it was just like, wow, man, that's stuff I was writing when I was 16. When I was 18 and didn't quite have the practice I do now, and I don't know, it's bizarre. Art, man, I've always been good at art. Anything else, not so much. Yeah. Put me in the real world, no. Clumsy fool there, but I don't know, art wise I've probably won awards in over half a dozen fields, and that I'm not the kind that really goes for awards much either. It's just the happenstance of the circumstance, I guess. But yeah, that just seems to be a lot of artists. They're just good across a lot of boards. There's there's something to the world you can see that most others can't, I guess. And maybe, I guess this is, my opinion of it. I think it's just this, I don't know, being able to see behind the machinery, and then maybe sometimes figuring out different machinery that will do the same thing when you're viewing it from the audience perspective.
Just making sure it reads and translates. Because it's the thing, you can always leave some things ambiguous and up to people's own interpretation, because that does help the connectivity. But you can't leave everything up to that, because then it's just like, what is this even?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There does have to be that cohesive theme, I guess, threaded in. But
I mean, if we're talking about surrealist filmmaking, yeah, sure, that goes out the window, but I don't think we are.
no, although I would love to try that one of these days.
Oh no, it's incredible when it's done well. It's just so easy to do it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I would suggest, if boy, it's really hard to get your hands on. There's a film called Dr. Caligari, not the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, just Dr. Caligari. It was shot in 1989 or released in 1980.
The one with the girl where she's like helpless half the time?
Yes.
Seen it, yeah.
Oh my God. That was one of my favorite films ever. And yet, that film is so hard to watch. It is so exhausting to watch because it's done so differently.
one of those films that's better on rewatches, because, like, once you could get past how
Yes.
jarring and weird everything is, it's like, oh, okay, I get what's going on now.
Yes. Yeah. I absolutely love that film. I actually tracked it down. They have it on DVD. You can buy it from a porn site. And I don't even remember who it is now, but I'd have to go look it up. But I found out you could actually get it, and oh yeah, I grabbed the hell out of that. I'd love to see that director's other film. I've never seen it. I've seen clips on YouTube, but it's called Café Flesh. Excuse me, Café Flesh.
I've heard of that, but yeah, I've never seen it either.
Yeah, I've never got my hands on that one. Just a couple of YouTube clips, and it looks like it'll probably have a lot of that same weird vibe as Caligari did. But yeah, that, or did you ever see Corey Maccabee's The American Astronaut?
That one I've not seen.
Boy, I mean, that's another weird one. I was probably 9/10 of the way through the movie before I decided, yeah, okay, I like it. I was just staring at it with that look of, huh? Through the first 90%. But, God, I don't know. Think Firefly, Joss Whedon's Firefly, on ultra low budget and shot in black and white and as a musical.
I was about to say, I'm like, so Dark Star, but I'm like, no, that's not Dark Star.
That's funny. I showed my son Dark Star not too long ago. Yeah, and okay, there's another great example. Man, look who Dark Star brought to us. John Carpenter, Dan O'Bannon, God, who else? Somebody else out of that movie.
Yeah, Carpenter has a wonderful sense of music. That's always been kind of one of his bigger selling points to me.
Unquestionably one of my weaknesses as a director. I'm always like, I don't know. I hired you to tell me what music to put in here. Yeah, like you said, that's why I like writing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is so collaborative, and it's one of those things. It's like you do have people that specialize in other areas to kind of help you out. It's like, okay, I got the thing, but you try and make it an actual what it's supposed to be.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Your hands know. Well, that, I mean, I've done some special effects for movies, but yeah, I mean, if there is anybody else, you want them, not me. The reasons I am looking for the budget with Grizzled, I mean, I have shot a number of projects myself. The fact is, there's other people that do it way better than me. And that also takes a lot of my mind off of having to do all the camera setup and worry about the lighting and all that stuff. And then I can actually start focusing a lot more on direction, making sure that I'm not having to deal. Well, I don't know if you can hear me, but independent filmmaking.
I can hear you now.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, I feel like here's the independent filmmaker problems presenting themselves right for us.
It always seems to be a problem with any kind of Skype, Google Hangout. There's some point where it's going to drop, and you just have to accept that.
Yep. Nickel and dime to death these days. Which, damn it, keeps everybody from kicking into funding my movie. Dirty bastards.
This is true.
I know, it's all their fault. None of it's mine.
Oh, please, if somebody had a formula for how to do Kickstarter, like, that would sell like hotcakes. Like, their supposed formulas on how to do YouTube. Like, no one knows how to do YouTube like a science.
No, I tried a lot of the stuff I read on the Kickstarter. Started at a specific time because then you're hitting New York on their lunch break, and you're hitting California right before they're going to work, and I tried all kinds of stuff like that and doing this, and yeah, I don't think it made much difference.
I mean, there's something to be said for analytics and all that, and you can study and pay attention to that. But when rubber meets the road, it doesn't necessarily ever guarantee success.
Yeah, I mean, who saw Deadpool being a hit?
I was hoping for it with how that script got leaked. It's like, okay, you didn't change the script, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, like, once Fox decided to go hard R, that was when it's like, okay, this could be good.
Yeah. Once I heard that, it was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a little bit of hope. Not much. I've been let down way too many times before, but I'll give it a little, and hey, Deadpool paid off.
The husband's a big Deadpool fan, and right before that came out, we got the Punisher on Daredevil, and we got the Preacher TV show, which I was horribly disappointed in both, which are two of my big comics. So it's like, hope Deadpool's good, because one of us gets a win this year.
Right? I've got to admit, I am comic book fatigue, but the only problem is Marvel is one of the only companies putting out good movies these days.
Yep.
I'm so over superheroes at this point, and yet they're some of the only movies I will, take a chance on without just waiting and, waiting for word of mouth.
Yeah, because that's why I was hoping Punisher did well, because that's not a superhero. He's a human being and very flawed.
Yeah, I like Punisher as a character. He's he's got that great complexity to him,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what makes him so interesting.
Exactly. That's the thing DC never quite seemed to pick up on. Marvel does it well. Is yes, we have these people, and yes, they have superpowers, and yes, they can do things, but they're horribly flawed.
Yeah, they're still people. Yeah.
Because we're starting to see Tony's alcoholism creeping in.
Yeah, and that's, DC. I mean, I guess that's why they do such good villains, because their villains are usually fairly human. Their villains have those flaws, and yet operate true to themselves because of those flaws, while so many of their villains are just, it's the right thing to do, Which, I mean, I'm kind of like that myself, but I know a lot of people aren't. And I think that's why their superheroes do come across so maybe flat some of the times, Other than Batman. Batman's been portrayed pretty well, but as a human with a lot of problems.
Yeah, when they did the animated Killing Joke, because DC does not only villains, but animated very well. If they would switch out doing their live actions for animated, they could make a killing.
Right.
But when you're looking at something like The Killing Joke, it was well animated and was a story of a villain.
Yeah, and I mean, that's I don't know, that's part of why it worked well. I don't know, I thought that was actually, Marvel has definitely been improving, though. I think since Spider-Man Homecoming, the villains have definitely been getting more three-dimensional, in my opinion, at least.
You've got to make more than just the protagonist fleshed out, because I'm gonna hate this person. Why do I hate this person?
Yeah, I mean, it is so hard to do, the evil for the sake of evil villain. They can play. You've seen it done, but man, those are so hard to do. I mean, how much more powerful is it to the story once you see their point of view and why they're pushing so hard for whatever they're pushing for,
Exactly. They have to have a motive, and it has to pass the why do I give a shit test.
Exactly.
It's like, you can intro and tell me things, but why do I give a shit?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess some of that, too, is just the difference in, showing and telling. Oh, he's so evil. Oh, he's so evil. See, he's so evil, or show him being evil. So, After Dark, people, fund Grizzled. Share Grizzled. Get it out to as many people as you possibly can so we can bring this giant mutant penguin to you and show you this oddly human story in the middle of this spectacularly crazy world.
I'd like to thank Rycke Foreman for coming on, talking about his process, Grizzled. Obviously, you should go give to it if you really want to see this, because who doesn't want to see a massive penguin?
Amen to that.
So, thank you very much for coming on and just basically talking about the art of the B-movie.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
I'd like to once again thank Rycke Foreman for coming on and kind of sharing his perspectives on filmmaking. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please hit like, comment, subscribe, especially on this one.